Oh boy. Okay, I guess we're going out there and talking about it. Let's go over a conversation that I saw popping up on the Locked On Canucks podcast. They had an episode, 675, from a few days ago, and you can see from the title of the episode, it goes out there and describes some very intriguing Vancouver Canucks trade targets. In particular, the title of the piece goes over Jacob Trouba and Colton Parayko. So, with this in mind, I'll leave a link in the description to the Apple Podcasts link if you want to listen to Locked On Canucks and their take on these two players. Trevor and Cal do a pretty good job, as they usually do, presenting their arguments and ideas. But to also help us out with this entire conversation, because this is a podcast, I don't want to take clips from the actual thing and put it into this video. Instead, we're going over onto an article on CanucksDaily.com published by Philip Gosselin. We'll leave a link in the description of this one as well, because what this article does is it goes over some of the ideas discussed by the Locked On Canucks folks, just so it's easier for us to put it on the screen, go over the arguments, and describe what it is that both of these guys could bring. So, let's go out there and read. On the Locked On Canucks podcast, the Canucks were linked to two very experienced but also costly veterans. Now, full disclaimer, I don't really care talking about the Colton Parayko conversation too much. I just want to go over Jacob Trouba. Trouba, currently with the New York Rangers, is on a 7-year contract worth $56 million, carrying an AAV of $8 million through 2025-2026. A right-shot defenseman, Trouba has consistently been a physical, reliable presence on the blue line, contributing both defensively and offensively with 30 to 40 points per season. His robust and physical style of play, combined with his leadership as Rangers captain, would add significant depth and grit to the Vancouver Canucks defense. His experience and defensive acumen could stabilize Vancouver's back end, especially in high-pressure situations. Now, here's the thing. I wanted to make this video to go over an entire diatribe of the idea of Jacob Trouba heading over to the Vancouver Canucks, and why this really would not be as good of a deal as this article is thinking about. You see, Jacob Trouba is a fine defenseman for what he is. He can play in the NHL, he can produce some points, he can be physical, and he can go after guys' heads a lot. But when you start thinking about usage and you start thinking about dollar amounts, that's where Jacob Trouba really goes down the drain. Not only is he extremely expensive at $8 million a year, but, and I think we could all remember this from the third-round series the Rangers had against the Panthers this previous playoffs, Jacob Trouba just keeps on finding ways to let people down. It's kind of bizarre how often it happens where when Jacob Trouba is in an absolute high-pressure situation, when the games matter the most, that's when he goes for a pretty big hit that misses and it results in a 2-on-1 the other way. That's when he's an absolute pylon. That's when he gets turnstiled quite often. It's weird how consistent it is that this happens, and I guess it goes hand in hand with the other Rangers guys being disappointing too. Everybody was calling out Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin for not producing as much as they did in the third-round series. But for Jacob Trouba, the fact that his contract got to a point where we were all talking about how he is going to get traded, or he is going to get bought out, he is going to get something happening to him, there was already a trade in place to Detroit that was going to go through. Everything was looking like Trouba was going to leave. This was like on June 30th, 2024, the day before free agency. Everybody was saying that Trouba was done in New York. Until July 1st rolled around and Trouba stayed. And then July 2nd came, and Trouba was still there, and he did not end up getting traded. There was an entire thing about him being committed to his partner and how he wanted to stay in the New York area for her because she was getting her, what was it, her doctorate or something like that? I completely forgot the details, but essentially, because his partner was stationed in New York, Trouba was not really allowing himself to get traded from New York, and that was a really big deal. And a lot of people started to talk about the dramatic side of things. Oh, look at this, man. The guy was already on his way out. He was going to get traded, but then he stuck around, and now he's going to have to live with playing for a team that he knows doesn't want him anymore, etc., etc. And he was going to go to Detroit, and Red Wings fans were freaking out because he's so expensive, and he's not that great in high-pressure situations, and now we're talking about him going to Vancouver? Look, Even if, in some fantasy mode, be a GM kind of outcome, you can say that Jacob Trouba would improve the Vancouver Canucks decor. That contract and that situation just is not attainable for the Vancouver Canucks. Patrik Allvin is already overpaying for one right-handed defenseman in Tyler Myers. You could debate that his $3 million value is a bit much, but Jacob Trouba at 8? Ay, there's going to have to be a lot of salary retained to put this contract in a position where Patrik Allvin, of all people, would feel comfortable paying it out. And even so, if you get Jacob Trouba, let's say you max it out, 50%, $4 million is the AAV. If you bring Jacob Trouba to the Vancouver Canucks and you have 7, 8 defensemen, Hughes, Hronek, Soucy, Trouba, Desharnais, Forbort, and Tyler Myers, one guy that is making a pretty beefy amount of money is not going to be playing on any given night, assuming the Canucks and Tocchet roll 6 defensemen. Add on to this Friedman and Juleson, and you have so many extra guys that are going to be rotating around. The reason this conversation works for other guys like Justin Schultz or Tyson Barrie or Giordano is because these guys could be PTO options. If you have a PTO, it doesn't really matter. If the guy isn't good enough to play, then he's not going to play. Simple as that. But if he is good enough to play, then he'll challenge other guys for roster spots, he'll make everybody else better. For Jacob Trouba, it's not a PTO. This guy's not going to be on a professional tryout contract. He's going to be on a full $8 million AAV deal. And the Vancouver Canucks just do not have the assets nor the resources to continue to invest that amount of money to a guy that could at best be a top 4, top 5 defenseman on the team. Not to say that Jacob Trouba is, like, significantly worse than Filip Hronek or whatever, like, he's still good, he's still fine, but circumstantially, with the contract in mind, it just does not make sense, in my opinion at least, for the Vancouver Canucks to go out there and explore. I mean, the conversation on the podcast also goes over Colton Parayko of the St. Louis Blues, but I didn't really want to talk about that in this video. I wanted to focus mostly on Trouba because, of course, he is the bigger name, and furthermore, if there is some sort of a trade, what kind of sweetener would the Rangers have to attach to get this thing done? We already know that the Rangers were so adamant on moving Jacob Trouba in the June-July period of this year, only for that to not happen with the Detroit Red Wings. If Patrik Allvin were to get himself involved in some sort of a Trouba conversation, then what? What's the sweetener there? He would 100% ask for one. He wouldn't be shelling out extra assets to get Trouba, unless, of course, it's like a money in, money out kind of thing. If it's like Tyler Myers and whatever for Jacob Trouba in a second, like, honestly, I could live with that, but there's no reason they're going to do that. They just re-signed the guy. They're not going to trade away Tyler Myers, for example. So, if you're a Canucks fan, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about the idea of Jacob Trouba being a potential Vancouver Canucks trade target? It was talked about in Locked On Canucks. I thought it was an interesting enough conversation to go out there and make a video about. I'll leave a link in the description to the article, as well as the podcast itself if you want to listen to Trevor and Kyle. They always do good work, man. Go out there, do yourself a favor, and give them a listen. But either way, I wanted to give my own 2 cents about this whole Jacob Trouba thing because, you know, we all have different opinions, and that's kind of the beauty of hockey YouTube. It's just sports, right? We're not going out there and debating the problems and economic state of the world. Either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Trouba and the Canucks. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.